Hello and welcome to another episode of the Alchemist Lounge. And today in the lounge, we've got a real life superhero in the house. He's both a powerhouse in the gym, he's a powerhouse in life. He's proving to the world that the only real limits are the ones we place on ourselves. He's got a bionic arm that's lifted a lot more than just weights. And I'm telling you guys, this man has inspired thousands to break their own boundaries, and he has a huge heart full of compassion. So he powerlifts with one hand. He inspires people all over the world. He models strengths in more ways than just the physical ones that he has. He's an author, he's a motivational speaker, and he is a genuine game changer. Please welcome to the Alchemist Lounge, Chris Ruden. Chris, how's it going, my man?
That was a great intro. I'm like, damn, who is he talking about?
Talking about you.
I appreciate the good work.
And for those that are just listening to this, I highly recommend that you tune in to the video portion that we're going to post, because Chris has such an excellent lighting setup and you will see him in all of his glory.
Oh yeah, 4K, just perfect, perfectly imperfect.
Perfectly imperfect. I love it. So let's start off, Chris. So 600 pounds with one hand, dude, that's beyond most people's imagination. Like, how did you get there?
So my biggest lift was I broke 640 in front of the Arnold Sports Festival, so there was about 20,000 people there, and then I went on to do 675 in my home gym. But when I first started, man, being born with a disability, I have two fingers on my left hand and a shorter left arm, and now I have a super cool prosthetic arm. But it wasn't always that way. I was born with a physical disability, and my entire life I kind of felt like a monster. I felt kind of broken and I just didn't feel good enough. And I kind of committed to that narrative for so long. I didn't even think I could ever work out, let alone lift weights. But when I found the gym, I was like, maybe I can. Maybe I can find a way. I couldn't even lift, 135 pounds with just the bar and a 45 on either side. And I just started asking myself better questions like, but what if you could? What if there was a way? What if the way that didn't exist could be created by you? What if? And I kind of what if'd myself in a good way instead of a bad way.
Yeah. How old were you when you were going through this realization?
Man, so I hid my disability for 17 years. And in that process, I found a way to live life still hiding. And I was not being my authentic self, but I was trying my hardest to do the best with what I was allowing myself to do, which was hide but still grow. I find that we don't exist on either like black or white spectrum. There's a gray area we often live in, this dynamic area of like, I'm trying to do better, but I'm still kind of self-sabotaging. I'm moving forward, a few steps forward, a few steps back. At 19, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes on top of having a congenital birth defect. So that kind of started my interest in like, I have to be more than this broken kid. I have to be more than these conditions I didn't ask for. Maybe bodybuilding, maybe powerlifting, maybe some way to prove to myself every single day, you are good enough. And if you do mess up, if you do fail, that's okay, because failing is like a verb. It's like stubbing your toe, but failure is a noun. It's an identity. It's a being, and I was like, I know I'm not a failure, but I know I'm going to fail in the process, and that's okay. So at 19, I was like, let's find a way to lift weights. I want to get big and jacked. I want to be strong.
Yeah.
I want to do all these things. I don't know how, but I'll figure it out.
Yeah. Well, that's a similar theme that a lot of us young males have when we're at that age, right? We want to become strong and big. We want to be like, you know what I mean? We want to be the best version of ourselves physically that we possibly can. And you had a challenge in that respect, actually physically lifting weights. Like that was something that you had to get through. So what was like the specific moment that you decided that okay, I'm going to get this done. I'm going to go down this path to get jacked, right? Eventually becoming a power lifter. Walk me through like the mindset of a 19-year-old, right, who has this challenge, right? And all of us have been 19. Some of us have been real virile, testosterone-filled 19-year-olds that have wanted to get jacked and wanted to grow. What did you do? Like, what was the mindset shift that we're like, okay, so I have this disability, and I'm going to do it. And like, walk me through the mindset shift, but then walk me through like what you had to do, like to actually physically get in the gym and work out with other people that had their limbs or had their, had all of their fingers and hands.
Yeah. Like any 19-year-old, I think we're motivated by, who we're attracted to. We're motivated by a lot of factors. And you said, the strength, we all want that physical transformation. And I truly believe, because one, we weren't mature enough to understand the other growth transformation that we need, the mental one, and that's the harder one. So the physical one is the lowest hanging fruit, and I feel like that's why we most often go after it. People try and lose weight, or they try and build muscle, they try and achieve a sport. I'm not taking credit away from it. It takes a lot of work, consistency, but there is a result that's tangible that we like, and the mental part is very tough. It's very, very hard. So I didn't figure about that way later after powerlifting, but in this process, I always saw people in bodybuilding magazines, and I was like, that's so crazy that someone could build their body differently. They weren't born that way, but they built their body differently. My entire life, I was different. I am physically different. So I was like, if they can build their body, why can't I, just in the way that I do it? And when you try and do a goal that people aren't comfortable with, it is an extreme. Building your body, building strength to that level, it's an extreme. And people often say, that's dangerous, it's not good, I don't know if you'll get there, your disability. Everyone hears these kind of excuses from people projecting their own insecurities or doubts on you. And of course I had that. I had to see it for myself. So I was like, okay, I went to a gym for the first time. I'll never forget. It was called The Firm Fitness. It's not a commercial gym. It was like a mom and pop gym. And I tried every single machine in the gym, had no clue what I was doing. And I was like, oh my God, I'm a one-handed guy living in a two-handed world. Yeah. Every machine is made for two-handed people. Yeah. I'm like, what am I supposed to do? Yeah. It's really hard not to get discouraged when you try something that you're really trying to benefit yourself. And I know a lot of people listening have been there. You commit to doing something good for yourself. You're finally ready. You pull the trigger. You show up, whatever it is, and you can't do it. You immediately kind of, let's be honest, suck at it. And in that moment is where most people decide if they're going to keep going and try or if they're just going to give up. I was like, there has to be something else I can do. So I started trying to figure out ways I could do maybe one side and then the other side, right arm and then left arm. Maybe I could use different attachments to use for my left. And I started getting interested in the mechanics of how that works. I'm like, if you need both hands to push this, if I pushed with one hand, would I need to do it differently? That triggered my love for biomechanics and kinesiology. Ended up going to school for exercise science and getting my degree in it, which in the process helped me learn about not only movement, but movement for me. I quickly learned, movement is individual and there is no universal fix to an individual problem. That concept really helped me understand it's not about what's the right thing to do, it's what's right for me right now. That question will push people a lot farther than trying to fit a round peg in a square hole.
Yeah. It sounds like, like the old adage about climbing a mountain, right? Like if I were to think, looking at you at 19, just learning how you can adapt to lifting weights and thinking that eventually you'll be able to lift 600 pounds with one hand. Now, just if we think about that, if people listening to this, imagine 600, I can't lift 600 pounds with two hands and a spotter. And somebody who came in the gym without any previous experience and started to break down all of the specific elements necessary for you to be able to do it, right? Allowed you now to open up a path in kinesiology, and it opened up an entire career path and an entire new journey and an entire new world for you. How long did it take you to go from that 19-year-old that's learning how to adapt and learning how your body is going to be able to take on these weights. How long did it take for you to start being comfortable and start to see gains and start to see you start to grow and go in the direction you want?
I mean, remember this whole time, once from 19 on, I didn't stop hiding my disability until I was 27. So the whole time I'm still hiding my hand, wearing a glove over
Oh,
my hand, and
dude.
I just lived out loud, but I pretended like the elephant in the room wasn't there. And I had this persona about me, this confidence about me, or fake confidence, that no one asked questions. I just became the guy who wore the glove, and that's it. That's where the conversation stopped. I personally wasn't ready, or I convinced myself I wasn't ready to be open with my disability. People knew about it. I talked about it a little bit, but I never showed my hand. Even in that process, I was training and I was learning to grow. And the first year of anyone putting full effort into exercise when they haven't done it before, they get this accelerated growth phase, and that really helped me get some strength in. But it took years to build up strength to go from 135 to 225. I was like, oh my God, 225, that's crazy. There's no way I could go heavier. And I was like, but maybe I could. Every time I said,
Wow.
but maybe I could. So 225 to 315 to 405. And I'm like, wow, 405, that's more than most people do in a gym. Like, I reached the goal, and I'm like, but what happens if the goal could be more?
Yeah.
I relate it to when you run a marathon, when you do anything of that sort, you can't see the finish line from the start. You just
Yeah.
have confidence knowing that if you continue running the race, you're going to get there. You can't see the end destination. You can't see 10 years in advance. You can't see 10 miles in advance. But you know a step after a step after a step gets you somewhere. And no steps gets you nowhere. And given those two options, I think most of us should be more likely to choose the step over staying stagnant. And that's what I did, man. I just, step after step, not sure where I was going, but I knew I was progressing in some way. I never
Yeah.
imagined I would deadlift 675, almost 700 pounds, but I stuck it out.
Wow. What a story. And the interesting thing is, so from 19 to 27, and obviously before you were 19, like your disability wasn't something that you shared.
Nope.
So what was it like to go to the gym every day and go through life without sharing something that was just something that was just such an element of everything that you do?
It went from my hand, like being bullied in younger school, elementary school, middle school, to building this confident persona. I realized, like, the way you carry yourself, the way you communicate says a lot more than words itself.
Yeah.
I started carrying myself in a confident way. I wasn't exactly confident because I was still hiding my hand, but I was like, maybe if I do this, people will just not, one, not bully me, and two, just treat me as a person and not my disability.
Yeah.
That pain and fear turned into confidence, turned into hide it, subconscious stuffing. Stuff it away
Yeah.
and keep it there. It lived in the floorboards of my mind, and I feel like most people do that with something. Because when I ask people, like, why haven't you? Everyone knows exactly what I'm talking about, even if I don't know what I'm talking about. You
Yeah.
know why haven't you, and you know that you should, but you're stuffing it away. That's what I did.
Yeah.
So I just lived my life as if nothing was wrong, even though something was very, very much wrong. People would look, but no one would dare say anything because I had this confidence. And part of me always wonders, like, I wish people would have talked about it to me, but that was never their responsibility. It was mine. And in that moment, I didn't take responsibility for processing the feelings that I had. My journey took longer than most and shorter than some. Everyone is on their own process, but it was definitely it was weird because even when I started public speaking, I transitioned from training people, getting my degree in exercise science, working with hundreds of people all across the world, to keynote speaking because I loved helping people with the mentality. I was still hiding my hand on stages. I was still speaking
Wow.
about overcoming adversity in the process of overcoming adversity. And I think that's what actually helped me connect with the audience. But man, no one is perfect, and I definitely had my time.
Yeah. Well, okay. So when we first talked and I knew that you had this disability, my assumption was that your story and your move into a keynote speaker and motivating and working with people to be able to drive a sense of energy and power and vulnerability came from that. But you were hiding that while you were starting to take on that career. Because look, I look at it like, look, I'm somebody who's out here on stage and sharing and asking everyone to share openly, and yet I'm not fully there. Was there any sort of like inauthenticity around that? And like, when did that suddenly become like an inspiration to you?
So I was truly authentic in sharing the messages I had learned up until that point.
Yeah.
I did not teach anyone to do anything I couldn't do yet. So I always taught from where I could authentically. And authenticity, I think, is what allowed me to connect, because I was very transparent with people that I was still actively struggling with my own demons, with my own things. And it allowed me to not be a speaker speaking down to people, but a person speaking to people in a conversation. And I feel like it did play to a strength, but people saw that and they're like, how could you not be confident? You get up there and speak, you do all these things, you get in magazines, and eventually got on a TV show, and it's like, how you can't be not confident, you can't be depressed. We tend to label what depression looks like and what disease state looks like and what confidence looks like, and we don't understand the invisible illness, the invisible struggles behind a smiling face, behind a confident person, behind a successful leader, is not always taken at face value. I had lots of moments that were rock bottom, to say the least, but I kept going because I felt driven to help other people, which inevitably helped myself. I knew eventually I needed to stop hiding my hand. I knew I wanted to. I was terrified to. And it took a lot of effort and a lot of psyching up to do, but eventually I committed to it, and that was the best moment of my life.
Wow. Yeah. And when it really resonates when you say that you've been traveling and you've been speaking in front of so many people and helping people from like all walks of life. What's driving you to do that? Like, what is your motivation to go out and share with so many people?
I mean, my motivation now is the same as it was when I started. I vow to be the person I never had growing up. My parents were great. They did their best. We didn't grow up with money. But I never had a role model. I never knew of someone who had struggles, multiple struggles, whether they're health or mental. Me having an autoimmune disease and a physical disability, I never saw someone like me in power. I never saw someone doing something about. If anything, I saw the media portraying people with disabilities as like pity,
Right.
and I was like, there are so many kids that are probably like me that see this and create this glass ceiling for themselves based on what's portrayed in media and movies and just society in general. And I was like, what happens if I could do something for myself that inevitably helped people break those ceilings, break those barriers, So that always has and always will drive me. Because now, eventually I took my glove off and I made a YouTube video and it went viral, hit 7 million views, and people were like, oh my God, like that's so crazy. That went super viral. That led to The Rock and his team reaching out to me to be on a TV show, season 1 of Titan Games. And there were so many cool things that happened, but what really happened was I finally faced like my biggest fear of showing my authentic self to the world. And not only was my fear like eradicated, but I was welcomed with open arms, and I feel like I started living my life at 27.
Wow.
I stopped living the shell of a life that I was living before, wondering how to navigate what people might think of me. And I started living like, hey, this is me, this is Chris, this is who I am. And people were like, damn, you're awesome,
Yeah.
And I was like, I finally am starting to believe that after 27 years of doubting myself.
Yeah. Well, I believed it, as soon as we first met.
I appreciate that.
And for those listening to this, Chris looks like an honest to God superhero. Like, he's an extremely good looking guy with like a chiseled features, and he's got a bionic arm, and he has a philosophy that is like limitless. Like, basically, limitations are self-imposed, which is basically what you just outlined for us. So break that down a little bit, right? Like, how does that mindset play into your daily life?
It's funny because, there's always people, especially on the internet, who are ready to pitchfork their way to angry mob crowds. Um, Limitations are self-imposed does not mean that limitations don't exist. I have 7 fingers. I cannot positively think my way to 10. I cannot positively think my way to no diabetes. I'm not invalidating the true circumstances that exist, you know?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, if I play hide and seek with you and you tell me to cover my eyes, I will probably still be able to see where you're hiding. Like, that's
That's
just,
pretty cool though. I like
it's
that. It's
cool. I always
it's
wanted
really
people
cool.
hated playing that game with me, but that's not the limitation I'm talking about. When I
Yeah.
talk about limitations or self-imposed, I mean, whatever the circumstances, yes, it might suck. Don't invalidate that, but it's not your fault. But it is your responsibility. It's your
Yeah.
responsibility to do something with where you're at. Even if you're handicapped down to last place, you still have to run the race because the race is life and you get to decide what you want out of it. So, regardless of fairness, regardless of anything like that, I didn't grow up in an affluent family. We went to the church for food. None of my family were entrepreneurs. I had to learn all of this stuff myself. There's
Yeah.
obviously privilege with different socioeconomic backgrounds and all that. There, we can get into accessibility, but at the end of the day, work needs to be done, and I needed to find my own path. And unfortunately, it wasn't created for me.
Yeah.
So I had to like take a machete through the forest and figure out what it is. I made lots of mistakes. I made more mistakes than most people will ever attempt to make. Lost lots of money, lost friendships, in the process of finding who I am, who I want to be, and who I want to serve in this world. I created something I'm proud of, which I travel the world 30, sometimes 40 times a year, speaking on stages to different companies and associations and helping people see their world without limits, helping people create better communication, better storytelling internally and externally. It's a process, man. It was definitely a process, but I'm extremely proud of where I'm at and where I'm going, and I know I'm going to help a lot more people do the same thing.
Yeah. And I'm already getting tingles because it's like this just came to my mind. It's like there's so much freedom on the other side of fear. There's like limitless freedom once you push past your fear. And it's clear that you're taking that freedom and you're just like spreading it all over and spreading all of this like energy and transformational mindset that's
Man, I
incredible. So
I
yeah.
love that you said that the freedom, like there's so much freedom on the other side of fear. To push that further for anyone listening, the space between fear and freedom can be closed by proof. And what I mean by proof is proving to yourself in the little decisions, the compound effect of little decisions, that you can do it. Gathering so much proof that fear literally couldn't exist. Imagine a law case where you have so much insurmountable proof that there is no case. It's thrown out, which is throwing fear out by proving to yourself every single day, whether it's making your bed, whether it's sending that one email, whether it's going to the gym and doing 1 rep and going home. Don't tell yourself that's not enough. Get proof that I can go to the gym and I can do a workout. Okay, do it again tomorrow and do 2. Do it again the following day and do 3. Prove to yourself every single moment that you can. So when you start to be afraid of things in the future, you have so much proof that you're like, guess what? There's no more fear left. There's only freedom. And that's how life starts.
That's powerful, powerful stuff. And it really does weave into the tapestry that you've built for yourself, which is one foot after the other, climb the mountain. They say you eat an elephant one bite at a time. But if you
Yep.
really put all of that together, you have like a really powerful way to live life. It's
You
amazing.
really
So let
do.
me ask you. So yeah, so what have you learned from all this traveling, all this speaking? Like I can definitely see what you learned through powerlifting and through shaping your body. But what did you learn through all the keynotes that you're doing and all the transformational work that you're doing?
In speaking, I've really learned the art of communication and how well received people are when you level with them and you don't talk at them, you talk with them. I am a keynote speaker, but I'm a conversationalist from stage. I don't speak to crowds, I speak to individuals. That's what I do. But
Yeah.
the main thing I've learned in traveling multiple countries like Uganda, speaking in places that don't even speak my language, I've learned that the best part of speaking and the most impactful part of speaking comes from listening. Listening off stage when people line up to talk with me, because every time I ask, does anyone have any questions? No one asks questions. Then everyone lines up to ask personal questions because they're embarrassed to speak in front of people.
Yeah.
In listening to each one of those people and giving them my full attention, my full interest, my full time, they feel like I'm the best person in the world. When all I really did was listen and give them my attention. And it made me realize we're a lot more similar from Oklahoma to Bahamas and everywhere in between. Everyone just wants to be heard and listened to and valued. And I realized, like, in speaking, the biggest value is going to come from letting someone have your time and listening to them in that process. So I explain to every event planner that books me, listen, I'm going to deliver a talk. They're going to love it. They're going to laugh. They're going to cry. It's going to be super impactful. But the real impact is going to come off stage when I stay around and talk with your members. And they don't really understand until it happens. And they're like, I can't thank you enough for doing that. It helps me just as much as it helps them. But I understand that people want to be heard.
Yeah. And learning that through speaking in front of groups of people and then seeing the connections that happen after that gives you like a very deep global listening, like you said, you know, like the listening.
Absolutely.
Like you can globally listen to the group as almost like a unified, you know, group, like an audience.
It's incredible, honestly.
Incredible. Yeah. Wow. That is so cool. You know, when I think about your journey, I think about the Def Leppard drummer that lost his arm.
Mm-hmm.
And even that, I know that, you know, that's something that's, wow, you know, a drummer from a major band, right, loses his arm and then suddenly has, you know, the most hits that they've ever had beyond that. And I only remember that drummer as a kid playing with one arm. And it was totally normal. It was like, oh, you know, he's cool. He's got this set up with one arm. If I think about that, in his circumstance, if he had hidden the arm or left and said, I can't do it anymore, imagine all that would have been missed out. And, you know, the audience didn't mind. As a matter of fact, it was pretty incredible. And the songs were great, and it added an appeal that other groups just didn't have. And so, you know, looking at your journey and seeing that really cool bionic arm and what you do in terms of speaking and how you transform is truly something that, you know, it's a superhero. It's a real life superhero. It really is.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of the bionic arm, can I see it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually just got a new shell on it. So this is new. Like, this whole design is super cool.
Yeah.
So that's the actual like shell design, and then the hand is here. So
Oh, dude, it's so cool.
yeah,
Does it come with
is
Wi-Fi?
what? It
Does
has
it come with
Bluetooth.
Wi-Fi?
It has Bluetooth,
It has
so it can link to
Bluetooth.
my phone, and I can control some of the settings.
Wow. If you
Yeah.
guys are listening to this and can't see it, this looks like the coolest arm. It's black and it's sleek, and the fingers look like something out of the X-Men. It's
Yeah.
so cool.
Really, it's cool. Like, when I do events for kids, which isn't often, but when I do get the like chance to do them, kids just think like I'm a bionic man, or it's weird because growing up it would be like Terminator, but now that's not really a thing because
Yeah.
I'm older now. So now it's like Iron Man or anything else.
Iron Man.
There's another one that I can't. Lucky Barnes, Winter Soldier, yeah, from Marvel.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it's cool to
Yes.
get the lingo, and just seeing kids see different as awesome. I love that, you know.
Yeah, totally. I'm really curious, like, where do you see, like, obviously the bionic arm and all the upgrades are changing things for you, like giving you all sorts of other abilities. But where do you see like technology going for people with disabilities? Like, you know, obviously you know when the latest and greatest bionic arm is coming up. Do you see like a lot of things that other people may not, in terms of where that's you know, where the evolution of technology goes in terms of helping those with disabilities?
I'm glad you brought that up. So there is a ton of tech coming out, from wheelchairs to like different kinds of cool canes and prosthetic arms, sensory hepatic feedback to to get like feeling of if my arm hits something, or hot and cold sensation that's transmitted through vibration. There's so many cool things coming out. The big issue with that is accessibility. You know,
Yeah.
a lot of it is only accessible to higher socioeconomic groups and like very specific groups, which sucks. So part of what a lot of people in the industry are doing are trying to increase accessibility. There's some cool companies that are creating 3D printed arms for much more affordable cost, and they have like Disney princess arms and Iron Man arms. It's really cool. But competition drives innovation.
Yeah.
So I've seen that on both the diabetes side and the disability side. I can say I'm fortunate to be in both groups because I get to see all of the innovation that's driven from the competition, and it really just helps the patient population. So it's exciting to see where tech and innovation is going for people
Yeah.
with conditions that they never asked for.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's one of the greatest breakthroughs that's going to be happening here, because
It's
now you have
fantastic.
other kids, right, that potentially, I mean, you were 19, but potentially at a really young age, they can get a really cool bionic arm and go to school and be the coolest kid on the block
Yeah.
because they have a bionic arm and you don't.
Yeah. And it stops it's a pattern interruption for growing up thinking that disability is less than.
Yeah, that's
You know,
right.
it's funny. People have come up to me before, like, "Oh my God, you can lift that much weight. You know, that's crazy. I can't even do that." I'm like, "Well, that's because you didn't train for 7 years. You know, that's
Yeah.
because you didn't put in the effort that I put in." And I'll be
Yeah.
opening a bag of chips, and you're like, "Wow, that's so inspiring." I'm like, "There's nothing inspiring about me eating potato chips. You know, there's no inspiration in that." But I know people mean well, but they don't understand
Yeah.
that having a disability does not mean I'm less than you. I'm just different.
Yeah.
And if you went into
Yeah.
Starbucks or a coffee shop and everyone looked the same, you would be really freaked out. But because you
Yeah.
go into a coffee shop and everyone looks different, you have no problem. So most people accept differences, they just separate disability and differences for some reason.
Yeah. And the hero's journey is filled with challenges and differences. I mean, every movie, every story that you hear, there's a challenge, and there's a massive difference between the hero and the others in the story. And so a superhero really is someone who not only rises above that, but then uses that energy and that superpower to help others
You know
in one
what's
way or
funny
another.
about that? What's
Yeah.
funny about that is when we watch movies, we want to see the hero be tested to the limits. We want to see them behind a car getting shot at. We want to see
Yeah.
the most chaotic stuff and them almost not make it.
Yep.
We want to do Spartan races. We want to do obstacle courses. We pay money to do these obstacle courses and put ourselves through hell. We want to see chaos. We want to see obstacles, but only when it comes to stuff we deem fun. We will pay for an obstacle course race, but if an obstacle hits us in our real life, we are defeated.
That's
We're
right.
done. We see the hero in the movie and we're like, he's so badass. He's badass because he made it through the struggle. Why can't we do that? Why can't we view our lives as an obstacle course race? Oh, easier said than done. Absolutely. But better done than said.
Yeah.
Simply put, better done than said. Because at the end of the day, if you're going to be throwing obstacles, which you are, why not treat them like you would a race that you paid for?
Yeah. Yeah, like a game. Like
A
we're
game, you
playing a
know?
big game,
Yeah.
right?
If you do a Spartan race and you can't do an obstacle, guess what? You do the what's it called? The consequence where you do some burpees or something, and then you
Yeah,
go on to
yeah.
the next obstacle. It's the same thing. You either stay in the lane or sometimes you need to change lanes in life. But at the end of the day, forward movement propels you. And the compound effect of every little step, looking back, you're like, wow, I made it really far. But that
Yeah.
only comes from forward progress. And forward progress doesn't have to be something crazy or amazing. You don't have to get on a TV show with The Rock. You don't have to overcome a disability. You know, you don't have to have it so bad that you make it to be successful. You just have to do the little things that matter every single day over a period of time.
Yeah. And you can make it fun.
You
You
can.
know,
You
you
can
you
make it
can
fun,
make it
or you
fun.
can make it miserable.
Right.
Both, you have an equal choice. And if you're writing your own story, why are you making yourself go through stuff you don't need to, you know?
Yeah, totally. I get it. Let's talk a little bit about the upper hand. First of all, I love the name of the book.
Thank
That's
you.
an
I appreciate
amazing
that.
book. The upper hand. Like you can't beat that. Out of all the stories in your book, which one goes the deepest? Like which one like radiates Chris Ruden like essence?
Man, I think one of the original stories that really helped me, it's funny I'm going to say this, it hurt me the most, but helped me the most looking back, was the story of Crystal. Like in my middle school, when I finally asked the prettiest girl in my middle school out, and I worked up the courage to ask her, and I found out she's making fun of my hand with a stapler, calling me claw boy in front of the whole class.
Oh,
And that humiliated me, and it
brutal.
hardened me,
Yeah.
and it was the initial moment that I started hiding my hand. Looking back on that, I just imagine like what was going on in her life that she felt the need to bring someone down, you
Yeah.
know? And I went through, I guess, a terrible time in the process of hiding my hand, but at the same time, that has built me into who I am and what I'm doing, or I've allowed it to build me into who I am and what I'm doing. So that was one of those strong moments where it was, I guess, slightly negative, but at the same time, it was vital for my character to say, listen, some people are going to knock you down. Some people are going to attempt to break you and humiliate you and all of these things. One, what are they going through? Because that's sad. That's sad that they need to do that, you know? But two, what are you going to learn from this? Because your value is unwavering. Regardless of someone saying you're not worth X or you're not worth Y, your value is determined internally. So it doesn't matter what anyone else says or where you're at in life. A $20 bill does not lose its value because it's wrinkled, you know,
That's right.
because someone steps on it. But why do we lower our value when someone says something like that? The version of
Wow.
me back then compared to the version of me of now, that would be like someone calling me a giraffe. Like I just know, okay, you're crazy, whatever, and move forward. But back then I took that to heart. And the difference is I allowed that in versus now I don't allow anything in that doesn't serve me. And that's what I'm trying to help people understand is self-communication, the upper hand, getting the upper hand over yourself and the stories you tell yourself. Because we can't do much aside from control our thoughts and beliefs, which turn into actions. But the amazing part is we can control our thoughts and beliefs, which turn into action.
Mm. Wow. You know, that particular story about Crystal, I'm sure a lot of our audience have gone through some sort of rejection, some sort of like traumatic event in their childhood that sometimes shapes a lot of what happens in your adulthood. You kind of bury that traumatic event and you tell yourself something like, I'm not good enough, or, I just can't do something. And it sometimes that manifests itself in all sorts of ways. And you don't discover, maybe never, but a lot of times it takes a long time to go back to that event and be able to complete that. Right. And based on the fact that that is like such a powerful story, it's clear that it had an impact on you. Have you completely let that go, or was there a moment that you like thought about that and said, you know what, I'm gonna like transform that. It's gonna be more about what was happening with her and nothing to do with me. Was there like a moment in your future that in after that happened that you had that realization, or did it happen soon after?
I think I numbed it out for a long time. I didn't face
Yeah.
it, you know, and I've learned over the years that you can't fix what you're not willing to face.
Yeah.
That
Yes.
piece of advice is vital, crucial for anyone trying to make some sort of change in the right direction. Um, Over the years, I've really developed this sense of domesticating emotion, not taking it away, but understanding that the emotion that comes from an event is valid, but not all feelings are facts. And the
Mm.
way I felt was hurt. I felt like I was judging myself that I wasn't good enough. Those were all feelings, and they were very real, but they weren't true. And again, it's not, maybe she was going through her thing. I don't know, and I will never know. So I stopped trying to figure out the why, and I focused on what. What can I do from this position here on out? And that's what I try and encourage people to understand, that when you have those traumatic events, those things, obviously, if you need support and you have access to therapy or anything like that, use that. Use your community, your resources, podcasts like this to work through, hard times in your life. But understand, a label or a situation can only hurt you as much as you allow it in.
Yeah.
And how do I know that? I ask you now, flat tire, how does that what are feelings come up when you think about a flat tire? And everyone can kind of do this in their head along, but I'm going to ask you, what feelings come
Yeah.
up when you think about a flat tire?
Well, depending upon where I am, I'm thinking, oh shit, I gotta
Yeah,
like, what do I do
shit's
now?
definitely one of them. Yeah,
Yeah, oh shit, like,
yeah,
do I have a spare? Like, oh shit, I have that really crappy, thing that I don't have an automatic, what do they call it? A car jack. Like I have to
oh
go
yeah, yeah.
underneath there, and I gotta like put a screw in, and I gotta twist it, and it's such a challenge. What a pain in the ass. I'm not gonna
Yeah, so
make
you're
my
spiraling. You're like, oh my
yeah
God,
spiraling.
frustrated, scared. You start
Yeah,
spiraling, all this stuff. And
yeah,
everyone's like, yeah, that's what you feel for a flat tire. No, it's
yeah.
not. No, it's not. Because when you drive by someone with a flat tire, you don't think of any of those things.
That's
You
true.
don't think, you're not afraid, you're not scared, you're not frustrated, you're not spiraling. You're going on about your day. It's not the flat tire, it's the fact that it happened to you. Which
Yeah,
means it's never the event, but how we process the event and how we hold it. So
yeah.
if it's not the event, that means we do have some control over how we react. And if we have control over how we react, it's not easy, but it does take effort and time to practice. So when something happens, it's neither good nor bad, it just exists. That the situation with Crystal, a lot of people are like, "Oh, that was terrible." In what I just told you, I was like, "Oh, I kind of found a way to make it good."
Yeah,
Both of those aren't necessarily true because the only thing that happened is what Crystal said.
that's
The
right.
rest is open to interpretation. And for me, if it's open to interpretation, why would I do myself a disservice and interpret it in a way that makes me fail or look bad or be less than?
Mm,
I have committed, and I'm trying to teach people to do the same thing, committing to interpreting things in a way that serves you, that helps you and doesn't hurt you.
mm.
Easier said than done, absolutely, but better done than said.
Yeah. Find a gift in every situation. Find a gift in every challenge. Like transform it into a gift. I love that. I love that. I'm curious, like in all your talks, is there a question that you like secretly hope someone from the audience will ask but hasn't thrown at you yet? Or is there like a question that threw you like you were like, what? What's that about? Anything
So
like that?
I had a recent talk in, I think, Rockaway or Rockefeller, New Jersey,
Yeah.
and I actually got it on video, which I'm super hyped about. I gave this talk about overcoming adversity, and it was great. Everyone loved it. There's one guy in the back, in the very back. I already knew from where he was sitting. I was like, I know exactly how this is gonna go. And he was like, yeah, it's really nice that you say all that stuff, but that's never worked for me. Most people would shy away from a conversation like that because you're like, oh, I'm in front of people. I literally went at him and I'm like, tell me about it. Let's workshop this live right now. And we
Mm,
started going back and forth, and he was just like, I'm just never anything I've ever done in my life. I'm never good enough. I never get anywhere. I'm lazy. I just don't do the. And I'm like, can I work with you real quick right now, right here? I was like,
yeah.
all of this language that you're using, you're speaking in present tense of past situations because you're not currently lazy. You were lazy in the past, but that's not who you are. You might have failed in the past, but you're not failing now. Why are you using language that is keeping you stuck? And we went through this language, this communication barrier that most of us have, where we speak internally and externally in a way that keeps us stuck and keeps us in a position of never being able to get to the future self because you're so committed to reliving the past self. The present self is a prisoner of something that doesn't exist anymore.
Mm,
Language. Language is so vital. And if you're around me, if you're my friend, if you're in my circle, I correct everyone. People who say can't, if you have the ability, you can't use the word can't. Say
yeah.
won't. Don't say
Won't.
I can't commit to a diet. Say you won't commit to a diet. I
That's right.
don't care that you won't commit to a diet. I'm not doing that to guilt you, but honesty, self-deception is the worst thing ever. Honesty helps you break through those plateaus. So when I do these events, I really hope people ask questions around language or provide the in for me to open that conversation up because that is the most unsexy but success producing process that most people don't want to get into because it's not fun. It's not sexy or exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, words have energy. They just
Words
do.
have so much power, and they
So
just
much power and energy.
the misused words create situations that you never wanted. And
Yeah.
if those are left unmanaged, like anything, I always use cars, even though I know nothing about them. But I know if your car is pulling to the right over time, that's going to get worse. And if you
Yeah.
don't align that, compound effect of good things are great things, but the compound effect of bad things are terrible.
Yeah.
Life exists in this like dichotomy. It exists in these dual fields, and most people only use one side. They either always tell themselves a negative thing or they always tell themselves a positive thing. Life kind of exists in the middle. You know, you need to know the good
Yeah.
and the bad. That's why people have a spare tire on their car. They're not pessimists, but they're prepared.
Yeah.
You're not a toxically positive person where you have no spare tire, no first aid kit, no nothing because everything's going to go great. That's life doesn't exist on the outliers like that, you know?
That's right. That's right. Wow. Powerful stuff. I want to talk about, first of all, I want to talk about the Titan games. I want to talk about The Rock. I don't know what it is, but I've been fascinated again by wrestling. Like, there's wrestling documentaries everywhere. And wrestlers in general, like I don't, their lives are pretty interesting when you go behind the scenes. But I'm really curious about the experience. Like, what was it like being around all these incredible athletes? Like any behind the scenes type stuff
Lots.
that you got to. I know. So tell us a couple of stories about
Yeah.
the Titan games.
So I was reached out by The Rock and his team, and I thought it was fake.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
almost didn't set up the next process because I was like, "There's no way this is real," you know. I did the interview, and they were like, "We're going to interview you. 200,000 people applied for the show. You didn't
Yeah.
apply, but we'll interview you, and we'll let you know what the next steps are if you move forward." I'm like, "Okay, cool. You know, whatever." I got a message like, "Hey, we've selected you and 200 people to compete for a spot. We're going to fly you out to
Jeez.
LA. You're going to have a
Yeah.
12-hour, grueling, multifaceted process to compete for a spot against some of the best athletes." And I'm like, I'm a powerlifter. I lift heavy weight one time and I rest. You know, like I'll be honest. That's who I am.
Yeah.
So I was like, man, this is crazy, but screw it. Why not? That my
Yeah.
goal was never to be a TV guy. Like I love speaking. I'm gonna speak for the rest of my life. But I was like, let's see what this is about. I went. I did the process. It was insane. Like, we did every obstacle. We part of it was media training and see if like you can do well on camera, running, lifting. We had to do a max deadlift with reps, which they just didn't understand the science of like 1 rep max, and they were asking people to do way too much weight. It was crazy.
Oh my
But I
god.
met a lot of really cool people there, and I was like, this is awesome. This is really cool. And when I went home, I was like, I don't care if I don't get on the show. Like, that was such an incredible experience. I get a call and they're like, "Hey, listen, we chose 30 people to be on the show, 15 guys, 15 girls. You're one of them." And I'm like, "No way.
Wow.
No way." They ended up choosing 3 guys and 3 girls to be on all the billboards, and I was one of them. So I
Oh
was on
wow.
buses and billboards, and I'm like, that's the guy who used to hide his hand.
Yeah.
That's the guy who was terrified to show himself, and now I'm everywhere. And I truly believe in those jump in the deep end moments. But I got to meet The Rock. I did lose my episode, but he came down and hugged me. I said my message, which I was the only person to say a goodbye message. The Rock like teared up and
Yeah.
hugged me. Um, but I got to see some cool behind the scenes stuff, and it was weird to see how TV works. I'll share
Yeah.
one specific weird story, just so people understand.
Yeah.
Right before we went out, me and my opponent were out there, and the guy had the crowd cheer my name, Chris, 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 and then he was like, "All right, now cheer the other guy's name," and they're like, "Jack, Jack, Jack," and I'm like, he's like, "Just in case whoever wins, we're gonna use that clip," and I'm like, "This is the craziest thing I've ever. That's
Oh,
so
dude.
weird." It was chaotic, but it was a lot of fun, man. I was up there for like 2 weeks, and it was something, man. I'm still friends with the majority of people that were on that show, and so much has come from that. But I was already building my business in the process, and it was definitely an accelerated leg up. But the true effort came from consistently putting one step in front of the other in business, in my personal life, in every aspect of my life, my diabetes management. Every single thing was just the compound effect of a single step. It led to some big moves. It led to some setbacks. But regardless, it always moved forward in some way, shape, or form. So anyone listening, you don't have to have this crazy story. And maybe you will develop a crazy story. Maybe crazy is different for you. But don't throw out the single step because you can't make a giant leap right now. Take a single step. Move a single step forward in your personal, professional, whatever life that you truly value. I want people to understand you don't have to have a disability because you have the exact same story as me. And you have the exact same story as him. You went
Yeah.
through some stuff, you got over some stuff, and there's some more stuff coming. The question is, how do you tell that story in a way that puts you farther ahead and helps the people around you? And that's up to you to decide.
Yeah. Wow. Incredibly inspiring stuff, man. Wow. I'll ask. Well, I guess a question I have is is there any like workout or exercise that's just like too much? Is there anything that you're like, nah, I'm not doing that, or like, oh, I
Yeah.
don't want to do that?
So there's some stuff that I don't have enough interest to do, so I usually use the cop out that I can't do it. But
Yeah.
Olympic lifting, I'm fascinated by the biomechanics behind it, but because of
Yeah.
the way I designed my hook and stuff, I can't really do the lift without it coming out of the hook. So I'm
Yeah.
sure there's a way. There's a guy named Paul DeGelder. He's missing his arm and his leg from a shark attack, and now he's on Shark Week. It's crazy, but he developed this little hook prosthesis
Yeah.
to do
Yeah.
like Olympic lifts. That's just something I never really got into, but I still think it's really cool. Also, I'm not really a
Yeah.
cardio guy, so walking is about where that goes.
Yeah. So limited cardio.
Limited cardio. That's a good way to put it. Limited, low intensity, steady state cardio. That's my thing.
Ugh, I love it. I love it. Chris, you've given so many incredible nuggets. I mean, so much that you've shared here today. If there were one like key piece of advice that someone listening or watching can carry with them when they leave this interview, what would it be?
I'm going to give my new concept that I haven't really unleashed to the world, so I'm going to give it in a wrap up form. And that
Amazing.
would be make your problems public. What I mean by that is you can't fix what you're not willing to face. So right now it's in this subconscious, you know something's wrong. You have to work on it and bring it out in real life. You have to make it public to yourself first. So you have to make the subconscious problem a conscious problem. From conscious, you have to communicate it to someone you love, someone you care about, someone who cares about you, for a little bit of accountability. So making it public to you and then to someone you care about. And the last step, the big step, is from communicated to broadcasted. And I don't mean making a YouTube video like I did, maybe, but I mean using that to help other people so that you're giving that obstacle as an opportunity for other people to do exactly what you're doing in this process. Because what helped me the most was helping other people. If you find yourself struggling, depressed, sad, anything like that, go to the local gas station and open a door for a few people and see how appreciative they are. By doing stuff for other people, you immediately start to feel better about yourself because that's the human connectedness that we have. So when I say make your problems public, you have to be aware of what the issue is. You have to make it real to you and make it real to the people around you so that you can get through this and overcome this. Once it's public, it can be faced, but again, you can't fix what you're not willing to face.
What a beautiful way to wrap up this incredible interview. Chris, transformational journey that you've been on, motivational words with incredible amounts of energy, a book called The Upper Hand, which is sharing all of these vulnerable stories that have weaved together this incredibly powerful person that you're now being. And that essence of Chris Ruden just shines through in all your words. For those interested in learning more about Chris, perhaps you'd like to have him come speak in an event, please go visit chrisruden.com. You can also Google his name if you want to take a look at some of the things that he's done in terms of keynotes. He's an incredibly powerful speaker, obviously, and his journey is like no other. Chris, thank you so much for coming into the Alchemist Lounge. Our friend Harry the Alien has been behind me create, sensing your energy from beyond the other stars of the universe. We're taking this powerful energy and we're kind of spreading it across multiple cosmos. Thank you so much, Chris, for joining us on the Alchemist Lounge.
I appreciate you having me, man. Thank you.